It's 6 o'clock and Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. So we're going to call the CCRPC Board of Directors meeting to order.
Recording in progress.
Charlie, you've started the recording. Thank you. And any changes to the agenda? Hearing and seeing none. We'll move on to the draft minutes of the April 16th board meeting, which is in your packet. Does anybody have any corrections for the minutes as distributed in the packet? Any additions or corrections to the meeting minutes as distributed? Hearing and seeing none, the meeting minutes stand approved as they were distributed. Thank you. Going to open agenda item 3 for public comment for any items that are not on tonight's agenda. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on any other topic? Hearing and seeing none, we're going to move on to agenda item 4, which begins on page 10 of your packet. The draft fiscal year 2026 UPWP Unified Planning Work Program and budget. We're going to need a motion to open a public hearing on this.
So moved.
Thank you, Mike O'Brien. And
Second.
a second. Thank you, Catherine. All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. Aye. Anyone opposed, abstaining? Okay, we have an open public hearing. Let us begin seeing if there are, first off, perhaps any members here of the public who may anticipate, maybe not ready yet. We're going to have a bit of a layout of the UPWP budget, but are there any members of the public here at this point that might like to comment or may in the future, before we close the public hearing, be commenting? Speak up. Hearing and seeing none. Who would like to take us through agenda item 4B?
Yeah, I guess I will. Happy to review either or both documents. We probably spent more time last month walking through the work program and the budget. So the work program, for those of you that might be a little newer, there's some color-coded tasks. Yellow, and excuse me, I got a.
And again, on page 10 of your packet, if you want the executive summary.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe I should be doing that, right? Yeah, the yellow tasks are pending. One quick update: we did just hear on Friday the Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund. We actually got word from EPA that they were going to provide $1 million of funding for, and I think it's going to be half grant and half loan for a revolving loan. So that was pretty good news. And I certainly was not counting on that. So,
Right.
So that's good. The other color coding, is blue are land use tasks. The green ones are new transportation tasks. And anything that's white is just continuing tasks from the year before. And the only other edits in there, really, there may be some red text of kind of updated text you may see. And we might have had, I can't remember if there was, but I think that's pretty much it. Happy to take any questions or walk through work program if there's any questions on any of the projects. The UPWP committee did spend 3 meetings kind of reviewing this. Thank you, Bard, for leading that group. And the budget is that separate link. The budget is just a slight difference as we were just updating some with some later information. But right now it's forecast to be $30,000 to the good. And happy to take any questions, thoughts, reactions. Back to you, Chris.
All right. Well, absent any further discussion on this, I'm going to ask once again if there are any members of the public that would like to comment on our UPWP budget and before we proceed and close the public hearing? Is there anyone out there? Okay, then I will ask for a motion to close the public hearing. I see Garrett with his hand in the air. Thank you, Garrett. And I see Andy seconding that. Thank you, Andy. All those, any further discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. Okay, thank you. All right, so now we're going to come to the action items. We have them subdivided into 4D for the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which once again would be all the towns, municipalities. Is that correct, Charlie? So we'd need a vote from them.
That's right.
for the-
Yeah, all the towns except Beals Gore and
Sorry,
none
Garrett.
of the regional board members. And I gotta get somebody at the front door, so we have a board member trying to get in our office. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh, Melanie's got it.
Okay. So for the purposes of 4D, I need a motion for MPO approval of the fiscal year 2026 UPWP budget. Thank you, Andy. And I see Catherine with a second. Thank you. And I'll get you third, Jackie. All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. Thank you. We will move to agenda item 4E as in Edward, and this is the RPC approval of the same fiscal year 2026 UPWP and budget. So I would need a motion for that.
I'll make this one since I can.
Yes, thank you, Garrett. And of course, this would
And I
include all our-
also have to
Second.
point out that there is a way to make this simpler. But please continue.
Well, okay. The second for Garrett's motion. I didn't see a hand there.
Second.
I'll take Andy. Thank you, Andy. Discussion, Garrett, please explain how we could make this simpler before we vote on this.
Only have one vote.
Chris,
Only
I think
have
that
one.
goes back to our bylaw conversation.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. You know me. I couldn't resist. I'll shut
Yeah.
up now.
Fair enough. Thank you. Duly noted. All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
And anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. Thank you. We will move on to agenda item 5, the Transportation Improvement Program amendments, which are on page 11 of your packet. And they're summarized there. Who would like to, Christine, are you here for that?
Sure. Yep, I'm here. So these are, it says on the top that it's spending both the 24 to 27 and the 25 to 28. People may or may not be happy to hear that the FY 25 to 28 TIP and STIP have been submitted to Federal Highway. So we won't have to do these double approving both documents in the near future. So that's good news. But the first two projects listed are new transportation alternative. I'm looking down because I'm looking at my phone. I don't have a second screen, so that's why I'm not looking at you guys. But the first two are transportation alternative program awards that were awarded by VTrans, one in Burlington and one in South Burlington. The next one is a new paving project on the next two are paving projects on I-89. The Colchester Swanton northbound and southbound, that's just beginning the design phase. So we're just adding the preliminary engineering funds and not the construction funds yet. And then the other one is advancing I think this is southbound Waterbury to Richmond. The northbound will also be paved and will also be added, but that's following slightly behind. The southbound lanes are going first. And construction for that is being added in FY 25, so that's moving quickly. And I can answer any questions if anybody has any questions on those.
Floor is open for questions. No questions on the minor TIP improvement amendment.
Move approval, Mr. Chair. It's Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Second. Thank you, Karen. All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. Thank you. That was an MPO action. Move on
Right.
to agenda items.
Just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Karen. I'm sorry. You were kindly quiet on that. Agenda item 6, Transportation Capital Improvement Program update on page 12 of your packet. And again, Christine,
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna bring up the agenda item. Is it, how do I share?
You want me to share, Christine?
Uh, sure, yes. Oh wait, I have it. I think I have it.
You
Okay.
got it.
I'm still on the tip amendment. Yeah, so this is just a quick kind of an information item for you guys to be aware of. So this is projects, Chittenden County projects that are in the 2026, the state fiscal year 2026 Transportation Capital Program that begins July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. And this is, so projects in Chittenden County have to be in the capital program. They also have to be in the STIP. So the state's spending plan. And I would note this list of projects of categories at the bottom. This is not the entire capital program. This is just, there are a number of categories in the capital program that have, don't list specific projects. So what this goes through is just those programs that list specific projects. And then it's funding for 1 year. So all of these would have funding continuing into the future years, but this is just showing the funding in the current year of the capital program. Front of the book projects are those projects that are expected to advance around the next 4 years, maybe sometimes a little bit longer. So divided into paving. New projects are identified just with the new symbol. And then this last section just kind of gives an overview of how this year compares to last year. You know, projects are, as they're being developed, there's a lot of things change in terms of the expected construction year. So it's not unusual for things to move slightly as they go through it. I would note that this first one, Colchester, Essex, resurfacing Vermont 15, that's actually being advanced. So this is not correct as of just about a week ago. But if you have questions about any specific project, I'm happy to answer them. Or we have Matt Orencio on the line from VTrans who can also help. The state paving, interstate bridge projects are moving. Exit 17, as we know, is under construction. The Richmond Bridge almost finished. We have a couple of new bridges in Richmond that are just beginning the design phase, so they're not really underway yet. State bridges, several new state bridges. There's some delay in this just because of funding availability.
Hey, Christine.
Let me stop.
Yeah.
Chris,
Christine, yeah, Jackie's got a question.
yep, sorry.
I just want a clarification on when it says delay of 1 year, delay of 2 years. Is that reflected in the fiscal year that's listed, or is it, delayed beyond? So I don't know, an example might be state fiscal year 26. There was a project and it says delay 1 year. So is it that really now 27, or it's been delayed from 25?
No, that's a great question. And I should have put a header on this column. It is compared to what it was last year. So in last year's so in this one, resurfacing 128, in last year's capital program, it was 26 and 27, and now it's 25 and 26.
Thanks.
Okay. And Garrett?
Couple of questions. One technically isn't any of my business, but the sidewalks in Huntington are going through. I see a project for that. Goodbye, Beaudry's.
I mean, this is reflecting what is in the capital program, what it's planned. Joe will be able to give us the more definitive information, but this is the budget and it could change.
Okay. The next question was about my community, Buell's Gore, Bridge 29. There's only one bridge on 17 in the Gore, and it's getting some reasonable work. I was Gore's supervisor when that was put in, and the state engineer told me that was a minimum 30-year bridge. And it's about 10, 12 years old. Just wondering why it's getting this work.
I cannot answer that off the top of my
Okay.
head. I can check on Matthew.
That
maybe
can be
you can.
done offline too, and just, I'm not going to vote against it because of that.
Yeah, it may just be a more simple rehab just to extend the useful life of it. It may not be a major project, that I'm not certain of.
Yeah, 33,000 or thereabouts. That's not major, but just curious because it's not that old.
Yeah, it's the construction amount is showing about 800,000, so I'm not
That's what the whole thing cost when it was new.
yep, I will get
Yeah.
back to you on that, Garrett. I'll
Thank
actually
you. Appreciate it.
And Joe?
Yeah, I wasn't really planning to comment on the sidewalks, but since Garrett brought it up, I'll just say that it actually it'll help Beaudry's because it'll make it safer for people to walk there, safer and more convenient, and lots of other reasons. But that wasn't my question. But I've been defending that project right and left, so just kind of that's my instinct right now. If somebody says anything bad about it. Um, so my question is, when you look at this, are are there any major differences between like what the projects that are listed on the MPO's tip and the projects that are here? Is there anything missing that's in the capital program that's now in the tip? And is there anything new being added? And I know like the timing is just, they're just one is on the federal fiscal year and this is on the state fiscal year. Or do you just wait because maybe the tip is under development now for the next federal fiscal year, which starts in October, and everything kind of gets caught up on the NPO's end when that happens. So yeah, that's just kind of curious how you
Yeah.
manage that, Christine.
So anything that's on the capital program that is new is not on the tip. Does get added when we update the tip. So as soon as we see it, we'll add it to the tip. In terms of, they're a little bit more, the tip is always being reviewed and updated and amended. So it's not typical that it's very different than what we expect. I think the only time that there might be more of a discrepancy is if there's been a decision by VTrans to advance or delay something, then we might be off. But most of the time we're pretty consistent. And some of these, like I mentioned, these state bridges, there's a bunch of new state bridges in Essex and Jericho. They're still in the planning phase, so I think the construction schedule is not set really, so it has moved somewhat in the tip, but it's not that common for there to be something that's a big surprise to us in the capital program.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, and then the bike and ped and the transportation alternatives, those are state grants. So where it might mention a delay, the towns are setting those schedules somewhat. So that's not really VTrans control. Jeff, you have a question?
No, I was going to use it as an opportunity for education for new board members who may not understand the relationship between our tip and the state's capital plan. And I may say this crudely or rudimentary, but when we approve our tip as an MPO, because we are the only MPO in Vermont, that our tip becomes part of the state capital plan by acclamation, except if something changes and things have to be moved around in terms of the timing, or if there's a change in the costs that could end up getting updated in the capital plan based on more recent information. So we have so many new members. I just didn't want that to be lost on people because Joe asked a very good question, but I could imagine at least half of our board members wondering what was he asking.
Yeah, so Jeff, it's the STIP that
The STIP, but that governs the capital plan.
right. I mean, they're interrelated for sure.
Yeah. And the STIP, for the acronym buffs, is the State Transportation Improvement Plan. Our TIP, which is for the CCMPO, goes and sent to the state, becomes part of the State Transportation Improvement Plan, of which then parts of that State Transportation Improvement Plan becomes part of the capital plan and gets actually scheduled to be actually spent. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah, it's all they're you know, the TIP and the STIP are federal documents that are required by federal highway. It's a planning document. It's a little bit more it is fiscally constrained, so you have to have money for the projects that you say you're going to build, but it's more of the intention to build, whereas the capital program is the budget. That is where the money is being spent. So there's a little bit different purposes. They're similar, but they are somewhat different and confusing. Yeah.
The larger Matryoshka doll is the capital budget, and then the smaller, medium-sized one would be the SIP, and then the smallest Matryoshka doll
I
would
mean,
be our TIP.
process-wise, it's hard to get a project into the capital plan if it doesn't go through the TIP and the STIP. Okay? And just that's why we spend so much time beating the hell out of ourselves over TIP and TIP amendments and all that kind of thing. And I just didn't want that to be lost on some of our new board members. The hell out of ourselves because it is fiscally constrained. So when something moves in one direction, something else has to move in the other direction, and vice versa, except when it comes to projects on the interstate and some bridge and some aviation projects. So it's we probably need a TIP STIP capital plan orientation session coming
Carve
up.
outs for those federal
Well, when we
aviation
update when we update the TIP, which will be this year in October, we can go over that, and I'll go over that relationship, so to hopefully make it more clear. So
This
the
is why
dollar
we
amount,
this is why we see Christine all the time, folks.
so the dollar amount of these projects, 85 million, 88, sorry. And so how this relates, and this is about when you compare similar, these same categories statewide, it's about 23% of the state total, which is a little bit higher than the average that we have had, but it's about in line with where I think we talk about that funding should be. The last page of the table, I'll just point out, these are two other categories of projects that they're not front of the book. It's called the development and evaluation list. This is a list of projects that are being worked on. They expect to have some work done in the coming year, but the construction year is not yet known. And the last list is called the candidate list. These are projects that are not having money spent on them. They just exist and are future projects. So I'm going to stop sharing here.
And just so everybody knows, we're just about a little under a third of the population in Chittenden County, of the state population, and we're about 35 to 36% of the economy, but we get 23% of the transportation funds. So that ought to tell you something.
I will say for the benefit of Matthew Orencio that this percentage calculation is, they're not apples to apples. So for me to say it's 23% of the state budget, it's a rough 23%. It's not a super exact number. VTrans spends a lot of things on statewide categories that we might get a piece of. There's things that are included, not included. So it's not hard science, but it's a rough estimate. So that is the capital program. Any questions that I can try to answer, and I will get back to
I just
other
want to
questions.
add maybe another topic, and I apologize, this may be a little bit of a tangent, Chris, but Just to let folks know that the transportation budget, the transportation revenue is under some pressure. And, I think was under budget forecast, I think. I don't know. Now I'm delving into Jeff's realm, but I think that's true. So just be aware that there is some concern, I think, about having the local match to bring in all the federal dollars. And Matthew, I don't know if you have a little snippet that you're hearing from leadership about the budget situation.
Not at this time, really. I think this has been a good conversation so far, but certainly if there are additional items that you want me to look into, I'm happy to do so. I think, budget's tight. It's the most succinct way to say that right now. And certainly we're figuring out how to accommodate all the different project needs we have right now, both in CCRPC and elsewhere. And so just to say that, word on the street and spoken about in the agency right now is that budget's tight. And certainly we're thinking about how to incorporate all necessary items into our various project planning processes. So, yeah.
And I just wanted to bring that up because that's one of the probably a primary reason why you see some things getting delayed. The cost of projects has been increasing more, and so VTrans is trying to juggle things to make them work as best they can.
Ironically, the fuel taxes are performing reasonably well through last month, and the fees and taxes associated with vehicle acquisition and registration aren't, which I would have thought with tariffs, there'd be some more forward buying than there has been on the vehicle acquisition front.
Interesting. So,
Have you priced a new car lately?
So this is a discussion we don't need any action on, fortunately. Unfortunately, Matthew is the one who's going to be working action on this probably as he tries to find the pennies and nickels and dimes to put it together along with Jeff's consultation. Any further questions for Christine on this? Any further discussion? Okay, let's move on to agenda item 7, financials for fiscal year 25. We're now in the third quarter. We're looking back on it. Page 16, Forrest.
We are, thanks. Hi, everybody. So we have had some progress since the last time we met. The last time you received a report that was through December 31st. And at the time we had a $60,000 deficit, and that was with the inclusion of $60,000 of municipal dues. And today I'm happy to say that we are positive about $29,000. So one of the factors that led to that was simply an accounting error that was found and improved our situation by about $20,000. But the other factors were a little more structural and a little more behavioral. So let us take a look here, if I can actually effectuate it. Are folks seeing the revenues over expenses against budget sheet? Yes, thanks, Garrett. Okay, so let's take a run through here. Our two main bellwethers, our two largest discrete revenue sources, ACCD and MPO. The ACCD revenue lines 4 and 5 taken together are pretty much right on budget for the budget year, 75%. And if we come down to row 23 and go over to the right, we can see that the staff time billing for the transportation program is actually ahead of budget at 76.4%. Obviously, everything matters. It all adds up. But those are our two biggest bellwethers. Taken all together, about 74% of our operational revenue. So read that as staff time, hear that as staff time. A little bit behind budget, but the good news is our expenses are even better at 72.6%. So again, looking at our largest factors here, salaries and benefits, both a little bit under the budget year, 74 and 72% respectively. So all of that is leading up to what I mentioned before, a surplus of revenues over expenses of 29, I guess is overstating a little bit, just over $28,000. So I'll pause to take questions, or if folks want to look at the balance sheet before I move on. Okay. So really what's happening here, we have a few different things that are leading us to this result. One of them is the simple fact that the second half of the fiscal year is better for generating revenue. You've heard me say this numerous times, just based on holiday vacation schedules. Okay. The other factor was after Charlie actually had numbers to work with and could see that we were maybe focusing a little more on, internal processes and policies, et cetera, in the first half of the fiscal year, which is important, that we really had to get back to direct billing. So that message went out to staff, and it appears that that message was received and staff responded nicely. And also, we were able to recognize that we were clearly under collecting with our indirect rate the first half of the fiscal year. It was too low. It was based on previous information. It didn't really account for our staffing structure. And I guess here that is, beefing up our business office for the most part. So once we got that adjusted, that's also helping us to be on track to, if not having a huge number at the end of the year, which we're not necessarily wanting to do anyway. It looks like we have a decent shot at ending the year in the black. So happy to take questions, and also not just for Jeff, but for the whole group. What was in your packet is the same documents that were presented to the executive committee and finance committee a few weeks ago. Our checking account on that day that was noted was under $300,000. That's back up to over $800,000, which still speaks to, the fluctuations, but also nice to have some of those large payments actually, hit the bank account. Jeff.
Just a comment, no questions, because we covered this a couple weeks ago. But it's great to see the improvement. Everything I would say to the rest of the board and staff and other folks is everything's fine as long as nothing stupid happens in terms of our federal funding sources. So I can't believe that, Charlie has to spend a significant amount of his time on, I'm sorry, stupid shit. But I hope that, this has us on the right trajectory. And the other thing that we decided at the executive committee level was that we go out and pursue a short-term credit facility in case something stupid did happen with our federal funding and we had to make do for a few months while we freed that up. And we had one a long time ago. We just never renewed it. And so the staff is going to shop around to see if we can't get something that would tide us over for a quarter if something bad happened. I mean, we don't want to be furloughing staff over something that's temporary and an obvious misunderstanding, about what it is we're doing. So that was the only other thing I wanted to supplement. And I didn't know, Forrest, whether you were going to cover that anyway. I just wanted everybody to know that we're always thinking financially about the organization, about this world that we're in, and how we can make sure that we protect ourselves so we can keep doing our work and not run into financial roadblocks that could happen for no good reason. Or at least
Indeed.
that's
Yep.
my interpretation. Sorry.
And I was off
Ditto.
last week, but I have started the conversations shopping around for lines of credit. So that's happening. I'm sorry. I thought I heard someone else.
No, I just said ditto to what Jeff said.
Oh, okay, thanks.
While we're, sorry, maybe I should have mentioned this under the FY26 budget, but and just Jeff's comments kind of reminded me, we've been pretty reliant the last few years on a very significant flow of federal funds that is not going to continue and is drying up actively, despite the fact that we just got $1 million EPA grant. But just big picture strategically, I think as we look to diversify our revenue stream, because we basically have federal funds, state funds, municipal funds, and municipal funds have been primarily dues and match for projects. But one of the things that we are talking to more towns about are there opportunities to provide direct services to the towns that they'd be willing to pay for. One of the first manifestations of that has been shared zoning administrator, which is in the FY26 budget for Underhill and St. George. And now we have, I think, maybe at least 3 other towns. Taylor knows better than I do, maybe 3 or 4 other towns that are interested in zoning administration services, but or planner services. So anyway, I just want to let you all know as board members that there's kind of a slight shift going on, or maybe a significant shift of really being able to provide more direct services. We've done that in the past too. We've been providing project management services for some transportation projects. Shelburne, Cy managed a construction project for Shelburne over the last couple of years and things like that. But I think we're going to probably lean into that aspect a little bit more. Yeah, happy to take any questions or thoughts. Uh-oh.
Go ahead, Dana.
Well, I just think that's a great idea because there's so many towns that could use discrete help with things at certain times and just don't have the staffing for it. And look at lending Lee to Shelburne. So there's always the risk that the person's going to want to stay there.
Right. Yeah, Dana's referring to, we had a senior planner, Lee Crone, who we lent to Shelburne for, I think it was a few months as a town manager, and then he became their permanent town manager for a few years. And he's now since retired. But yeah, so those things can happen.
I think it's a great idea.
All right, Joe.
Yeah, I like it. I like the idea in terms of, especially for small towns, helping us out. Like, we're now starting the process for another zoning well, might end up being the same zoning administrator, but we're reposting that job. But it's always been, they come and they go because we can't offer, I don't think, great pay and everything else. So I think there's definitely benefit to the towns to do that. But I'm just kind of wondering, how does that, so you have all this revenue coming in and your staff is kind of built around that revenue that comes in. And then you start offering these other services that are, paid services. Does that mean, you still, theoretically, you're still, hopefully you're still going to have all this federal money coming in. I guess what I'm getting to, does that mean adding more staff in order to provide those other services? Or is there, how do you sort of balance that?
I'm going to say the broad answer is yes, but it kind of depends on the situation. So, for this first ZA position, I think we are looking at hiring another staff person. But we've got 2 or 3 towns that are asking for some internal policy work. In months gone by, I would have called it this was the equity policy advisor that a few towns were looking at. And so I think they're going to hire some of Ann Nelson's time to help them with some work. So I think it could be either direction, Joe. It could be the new staff, or it could be buying some of our staff time, like size time to manage a sidewalk project, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's not like it's going to happen really fast, and it'll be some sort of hybrid of existing staff, maybe some new staff if it sort of picks up. And
exactly. And I think this is kind of like slow evolution that I kind of wanted to just I've been thinking about it a lot, and just make sure you were all aware of this kind of evolving opportunity. Because yeah, I think I just know we can't count on the flow of federal funds the way we have been able to, right? So
Yep. Thanks.
Anyone else have thoughts for Charlie and or Forrest on the financials?
Hi, Bruce is here. He has a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Charlie, did you say something, did I hear you say something about Ann Nelson's time? I missed that one. What did you say again? About Ann Nelson's film?
yeah, so specifically Winooski and Essex Junction budgeted, I think, $25,000 each, so $50,000 total to do and this came from the city managers, Elaine Wong in particular, drafted a proposal asking for us to look at hiring somebody. If they came in with the money, would we hire somebody to help them do some internal policy work and maybe staff training and things like that? And so, as opposed to hiring someone, because it's only 50,000 and you can't hire somebody for that, they're gonna, I think, buy some of her time in this next fiscal year. So probably more in the fall timeframe, and kind of pilot that work a little bit and see if other towns are interested in pursuing some of the same kind of work. And that could, might that lead into another hire? Possibly, but we'll kind of see where it goes.
Oh, okay, so yes, I remember that. And so that's my idea too, the same thing where you're gonna do it. I believe that's will work. But I'm sorry I'm a little late, everybody, but I do have one thing to say about the housing event. If I may go back or whatever, is that it was no people who looked like me there. And I felt a little odd, I'm on the board of directors for RBC, but still there was nobody, not a lot of people of color there at the housing event who should have been there. And I think we need to do more ways to reach out to those individuals where they live at, where they stay. We represent like 19 municipalities, and we should be able to get people who are people of color at our events. Thank you. That's it. Did they hear me?
I believe they did, yes.
You were saying you didn't feel that there was a great representation at the housing convening that we had.
Yeah, Bruce, you're right. You're right. And for these type of things like housing, that's first time home buyers, grants and a lot of credit unions and finance agencies want to help people who people of color, and there was none there. And I represent housing, social, and economics for RPC, and so I gotta do what's right for what I do for the board.
Well, thank you. I agree, and it's the same problem that we have with all the folks who are busy with the 2 jobs and kids at home, and they get home at 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock later, and it's all they can do to get food in the bellies of the kids and get them into a routine to get them to bed and then out to school the next day. So I don't know how the easy solution is there, because I look at folks like myself that are retired and I'm like, of course, I got the time, and I don't see 30-year-olds. So it's absolutely an endemic issue for representation. And the 30-year-olds that are there are like Melanie and folks that are employed and part of being there. Thank you very much for both of y'all. I appreciate it. Other thoughts for Charlie? Bart, go ahead.
I've just been contemplating the
Stay. I go where they meet at, and I hand out the information, but you know what's going on. Because a lot of people don't even know. They didn't even know. They don't know that we're putting on stuff. Other people are putting on stuff. A lot of agencies. I'm a commissioner for Human Rights Commission, and I ask people who are like me, do you know what HRC stand for? They never heard of Human Rights Commission. Didn't know what it was about. Didn't know the information. What we do. So I have my lawyers going out to teach more about what Human Rights Commission does. But boots on the ground, that's how you reach it. You gotta go where they are. So I'm willing to do that, Honorable Chair. I'm willing to go to house, meet with these individuals, give them brochures about the things that we're trying to do, what we're doing, and get involved, join some of our advisories, and help community and people who they live with.
I appreciate that, and you're right. And certainly like Winooski Community Center, I think about folks where they gather in their neighborhoods is the best place to get a hold of them and make them see the value of these offerings that we have out there. Let me hear what Bart's saying there.
Well, it's returning to a previous topic, and it was related to our sort of hiring staff and leasing staff, or on behalf of other towns. So maybe exhaust this topic and then return to that one if you'd like.
Okay. Other thoughts there, Melanie? Bruce?
Yes, Tess is in the room and she also had a comment. Oh, yeah, I just was curious, what was the outreach to get the information about the housing event out to different communities? Like, does anybody know what the process was that we went through to make sure that people from different demographic groups knew about it?
Do you want me to address that, Charlie? Sure. So we have several internal listservs that we use when we're advertising for events like this. That includes, for example, informing members of the seat committee to attend. Primarily that event is aimed at folks that are on municipal housing committees, so they were invited directly. People on municipal planning commissions, folks at state agencies, folks that work in the housing sphere. Just in terms of general population outreach, wasn't so much the focus. It certainly was more of a focus on folks that work for municipalities or folks that operate with state agencies. Does that help at all, or?
Yeah, that clears it up.
And this would be somewhat separate, Taylor, than the flu maps where there is a general outreach, correct?
Correct. The future
Okay.
land use map, everything related to Act 181, we use those same listservs or those same email lists that we have. But we're also trying to, do outreach through our municipal partners and whatever avenues that
And we're going to talk about that in a couple minutes, right?
Okay.
Exactly. We can leave that for a couple minutes from now.
All right. We'll get to the
All right.
181 on agenda item 10. Bart, hopefully.
This might be just a placeholder. I've been contemplating the financial implications of our hiring staff and then leasing staff to towns, and what the price structure is, because there's compensation, wage and compensation, but then there are the other administrative overhead and indirect costs, because obviously if we're paying somebody $40 an hour and leasing them out for $40 an hour, it doesn't cost us $40 an hour. It costs us more than $40 an hour. So it's, and I haven't really thought through the implications and our ability to do that for how much and how long. But as we contemplate things like our indirect rate and, at one level, it'd be great if we could provide low-cost staff to everybody all the time by somehow subsidizing it. But I'm just struck that there is a limit at some point to doing that. And I don't know if staff or Charlie have comments on it.
Absolutely thinking about all those things, Bard. I think stay tuned so as we test things out. So no firm answers at this point, but yeah, we have to recover our costs. I'll put it that way from just a fiscal responsibility standpoint. So we are not subsidizing these, but we are trying to also position it and do what accounting work, and probably I'm giving Forrest a bit of a headache, I think, in trying to say, like, well, if they're working for the towns in the town offices and stuff, then they're not in our office and they're not part of our indirect rate. So we're trying to do some accounting things to minimize the cost, to make it, affordable to towns if we can. It may not always work.
Thank you. Garrett?
Just to Bard's point, I've spent quite a few years working as a consultant for another company working with customers. So similar situation to what you're talking about here, except I'm a 1099 at the companies that I've worked with. And every single one of them has marked my time up significantly to cover the costs. Generally at least 25%, oftentimes as high as 50%. So there's actually, depending, I know we need to be very careful working with towns, but I think most anyone would expect that you've got to at least cover your costs and probably a little bit more to make it worthwhile. So, somebody working at getting paid 40 an hour using that number, they need to be billed at 60 or 70 or something like that. Obviously, you got to sit down and figure out the numbers, but it's something that's done all the time, and I just wanted to mention that.
But I think Bard's point is also correct, where you have zoning administrator being considered to be shared and a community engagement coordinator considered to be shared. And then perhaps you go on to two other potential shared positions and, cable communications coordinator or something of that sort. And before you know it, you have four people all almost ghost for the time that they might spend in Winooski for CCRPC work directly, and they're being parceled out to the towns. And I don't want to understate the value for Bolton and Buell's Gore and Milton and Heinsberg and all the towns that maybe don't have the resources of South Burlington, because it's easy to sit on the hill in Burlington and Colchester and South Burlington, Essex, and say, oh, well, why don't they have, what we have? Well, they don't have the same tax rate. They don't have the same tax base.
And you're not sitting on the hill, you're down in the valley.
Oh, come on. We call ourselves Shelburne Hills. It gives us a nice air. We're on a ridge line, I think. Dana, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just also thinking about being cognizant of the stress that it may take on staff, CCRP staff, that all of a sudden may lose a team player on something, and how nimble you would have to be in order for it not to feel like a real reduction in force for existing staff working on existing CCRPC projects. All of a sudden, well, they're gone for a while. I was counting on them to do this with us, so just another thing to think about.
We will go through all the dynamics for sure. Thank you.
Any other thoughts for Charlie or Forrest on agenda item 7? Okay, let's move on to Catherine and agenda item 8 on page 22, the Board Development Committee nominations.
Okay, after at the last board development meeting, after confirming with the people involved, the Board Development Committee has voted to nominate as officers and at-large representatives Bard Hill for chair, Jackie Murphy for vice chair, Karen Peterson for secretary treasurer, Andy Maltrell for at-large for towns over 5,000, and John Segali at large for towns under 5,000. And then Chris Shaw will become the immediate past chair and chair of the Board Development Committee then after that. And so, in the June meeting is when people can vote on the slate of officers, or if there is interest from the floor to nominate others, that also can take place at the annual meeting. But after this slides also into number 9, future board meetings, because it's up to the board development also to provide, ideas for trainings and things like that for committee members. And it said after we settled on the slate of officers, we moved into discussing more trainings with, particularly with an orientation, giving the turnover that we've seen in board members of the RPC itself. And also with the turnover, members other than at the annual meeting did not have the opportunity that those of us that have been here longer to actually get to know people in person. There was discussion then to meet in person quarterly, which these are all things that the board itself needs to discuss. And then what the board members that are currently here also need to think about what trainings would be of interest to members that you would be interested in learning about, whether it's just even a whole list of acronyms, or are there other items of interest that the board development committee should be considering? So throwing it out for discussion, or something to think about for the annual meeting or whatever.
You don't need answers tonight.
Well, actually, it would really be helpful to staff at least to get some feedback from board members. Maybe we can take them one at a time. Because we're going to put together the annual calendar of meetings that to be voted on at the June meeting. Would it be okay if we at least put on there September and March board meetings being in person, and at least try it this next fiscal year? I'm seeing a few head nods. Yeah, Garrett.
Do you still have your hand up, Garrett, for Janet? Go ahead.
This is for Charlie's question. I think a few more in-person meetings is a great idea. Zoom really does work. Maybe I'm more accustomed to video meetings than other people, but they're great, but they're no substitute for some in-person meetings. And you just miss stuff. So I think at least a couple of in-person meetings a year would be a really good idea. 3 or maybe quarterly. I'm open, but I think that would be really good, especially if you have pizza.
I think we already,
Sorry,
and again, if
it
you look
was
at
there.
page 2 of your packet, we have the general framework of our annual action calendar at the very bottom of page 2. And that gives you the template, I think, for fitting in when these in-person meetings might happen. The suggestion being March and September seemed to dovetail nicely because we have an in-person December legislative breakfast,
Yep.
and we have an in-person June annual meeting that's either going to be out in the more rural territory or in the more urban territory that we already have in place for in-person. So we have 2 meetings a year in person right now. And by squeezing in a March and September, it would seem to offer that quarterly opportunity for us
I
to get
agree,
together.
and I would definitely support that.
And they're not snowy months, thankfully, or at least they're not supposed to be. Although March,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, wait till tomorrow.
Oh God, it's probably already snowing on Killington.
Snow on Mount Mansfield last week,
Yeah.
a couple of days ago.
So I'm not seeing any objections to trying, and we would still, per the open meeting law, have to offer hybrid option. So if somebody wasn't feeling well and wanted to plug in, that would still be an option. Or if we did have snow, in March, we could still make that work with Zoom.
But they're not getting pizza.
I was going to say
That's
no
true.
DoorDash.
There will
Uber
be no
Eats, or
delivery
They're not
Domino's.
getting pizza. And then the only thing about having a couple of work sessions, working board meetings, is when we're at the annual meeting or we're at the legislative breakfast, we don't have the opportunity to interact in a meeting environment. We all kind of get gobbled up by the table that we.
Yep. Oh, Jeff, you unmuted, or you muted.
There are other people who are there that kind of make it a special type of less than normal working meeting. And the thought process was, these kinds of meetings work great when you have a personal relationship with someone, but there have been people that have come on and off the board that I've never met personally. I only met through video.
Mhm.
Good. So thank you for that feedback. Is anyone else? So it seems like there's some level of comfort with that. Then can I switch to the training topics? I'm tempted to ask newest board members first what they would like to hear more about, but I don't want to pick on Tess. I see her already worried that I'm going to pick on her. Oh, there's a hand raised in the conference room.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's
Oh,
Bruce
sorry.
Wilson. Oh, am I on? Am I live? No. So it's Bruce Wilson, and I like Zoom meetings, and I have to do a lot of them because of all the different works I do. But I have some couple of locations that I can actually sit back and do Zoom, and don't have to come. Like when I come here, I come to RPC boardroom every meeting, every meeting. I don't have to come here, but I come here because in my heart, I feel like I should be in the boardroom when we have board meetings, I feel in my heart, we'll have pizza, we got, I think sometimes we might have some seltzer in the refrigerator, but I get some coffee sometimes, but I feel so much better when I'm in the boardroom having a board meeting. And so I'm all for people that can make it to the boardroom to come, I feel so much better. But I'm gonna keep coming every time I ask Charlie, can I come to the boardroom for our meeting? He said, we'll make it right for you. So that's my answer.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Any thoughts? Karen, yeah, topics.
Yeah, I mean, as not only I relocated to Vermont, 2 years ago, July, so not quite 2 years ago, and moved to Williston. And then it was probably about 4 months after that that I was appointed as the alternate. And now I'm the main representative. So not only am I coming up to speed with the planning commission, but also with my own municipality. So I would love, and actually, I got some great tips from Jeff and some other folks recently about how to further engage with the select board and the town planning commission and all that. But as a newbie, not only to this commission, but also just to my community, like I could really use some pointers on engagement and how to, help people understand what the commission does and how to be a better advocate for my municipality. So, and I may be in the minority for being such a recent Vermonter, but anyway, that's my perspective on it. And I would love to see everyone in person as well. That would be fantastic.
Great, thank you. Did that provoke any other thoughts about agenda topics for trainings? So yeah, I think that engagement and advocacy work is a good one.
Charlie, this is Jeff. I just think we need MPO 101 and
Yep.
RPC 101 for everybody. Everybody can look and see future agenda items, but I think just an overview of the work plan for both the RPC and how there are nuances related to the MPO, I think is important for starters for everybody. And maybe we can do that at the September meeting or something like that after everybody has a nice summer. Although I hope that summer wasn't only last week. But that would seem to me to do that. And then when we do the tip, I think if Christine could do tip 101 and how it relates to everything between that and our UPWP and ECOS, and then the things that we do as a planning commission, helping communities with their municipal plan updates and all those kinds of things is just the kind of overview thing that everybody needs to understand that this is what we do every year.
Yep.
And then we can get into the nuances because I've been on the MPO board for almost 25 years now, and I still learn stuff.
Dana, thank you, Jeff.
Just wanted to say that the housing summit was great. I learned a lot, and it was really well presented, and staff should be really recognized for their hard work and presentation. And great location, really interesting and good food. And it was just wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to talk about that in a few minutes as part of our outreach update. Any other topics that people would find helpful to have? And I think one other thing we were thinking about was kind of covering the board handbook, code of conduct type of stuff. You know, maybe that's July. You know, is kind of, and we may have a couple new board members that's are starting the month of July. So, okay. Well, thank you. If you do have more thoughts, please get in touch with one of us. Doesn't matter which staff person or Chris or one of the officers. So thank you.
Great. Catherine, anything else?
No, in fact, it's, I should have mentioned thinking about the board handbook first, because this year with the changes, we now require people to sign that they, got, ethics and all that good stuff.
Very good. All right, let's move on to agenda item 10, the Act 181 implementation update. Would that be you, Taylor?
That is me, Chris. 1 second. All right, just need to move some things out of the way. We'll go into presenter mode. All right, so here to talk about
we're seeing the presenter mode, Taylor.
You're seeing presenter mode. Okay, that's unfortunate. And now all three of my screens are all acting up and looking weird. So 1 second.
Large now.
You got it.
Does that look good to you folks now?
IMAX.
Oh, it just flipped back.
It went back.
Went back. All right.
Thumbnail sketch.
Does that look correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Sorry about that. Here for my monthly ECOS plan update. First things first, public comment on the ECOS plan or the future land use map. And the housing targets closed on Monday, May 19th. Thanks to all those that on the board that took time to provide comments either on the map or about the housing targets. Currently working with staff to summarize all that information into something digestible by the end of this week. We'll learn a little bit more about summaries in a little bit. Once that's complete, that summary will be available on our ECOS engagement page. In terms of some statistics from our outreach efforts, on the map viewer itself, we received 238 comments from folks. 58 individuals interacted with our map viewer and provided comments. I also received 29 emails from individuals or groups to provide comments on the map or on housing targets. And we had 15 folks respond or fill out a form on our website to provide comments specifically about the housing targets. That was an anonymous form. Just provide you with some scope of the number of folks that have interacted with the tools that we provided. And in addition to that, there's all the events that we've held over the past almost year timeframe from September 2024 to present. And so our staff has held or been at about 140 events in less than a year to talk about Act 181 and to discuss the map and the targets. And we see that broken down by category here. I just want to praise primarily the four primary folks that have been doing this, and that's Sarah Muskin, Kate McCarthy, Darren Shibler, and Maya Balassa on staff. They all are assigned municipalities and their leads. Charlie and I have been filling in the gaps, and folks like Emma or even Melanie on staff have filled in gaps when needed. But it really is those four staff that have been doing most of the meeting in person with our municipalities. And we're not done.
Some heavy lifting.
we're not done. We're still meeting with municipal planning commissions and select boards over the course of the next month and a half to ensure that we're in a pretty good place with the map, and also to have discussions with municipalities or answer questions about opting into Tier 1B. And so those discussions are going to last through, we think, the end of June, maybe a little bit into the beginning of July. We also have one remaining focus group with a low English proficiency population. That's with the Swahili group. We also have an event scheduled with the Land Access and Opportunity Board. That's LAOB. LAOB is within VHCB, the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. And that event is with their Homes for All committee, and is going to be focused on having a circle with houseless folks in Chittenden County to learn more about their experiences and to learn more about their needs, peripherally related to the map and to the targets, definitely more related to the ECOS plan itself. And that event's happening on June 6th. We also have a webinar scheduled next week, Thursday, May 29th at 1 p.m. We will also record it and post that webinar to our website, where we'll be debriefing that summary of comments we've received from the map viewer and from all our events to date, just to share with the public what we've heard in more detail than what I'm going to provide tonight. Tonight's going to be a summary. We also have a mobile home park survey that we have out, really just generally assessing mobile home park needs around transportation or around the park. There's parks themselves and infrastructure needs there, that we're going to leave that open through the end of June 2025. We've had really great responses in some communities and not so great. We want to even that out. But I think we're well over 75 responses on the mobile home park survey. And we'll be sharing that information with our municipalities. We've also have talked to and plan to talk to our partners at the Department of Housing and Community Development, the Land Use Review Board, and the Agency of Natural Resources this summer, before we head into the more formal adoption process next fall. Any questions on events, outreach, how much we've done over the last few months? Hearing none, I'll move on to what we've heard. All the things that we've heard, we're really going to summarize in 4 documents. 2 of which are done, but I believe still need to be posted on the website. Emma, you and I should talk about that later. First off, we have a summary of our 6 focus groups we held with regional and statewide interested and affected parties this spring. Those focus groups were focused on a particular topic. So we had a housing focus group, we had an economic development focus group, and we had a working lands focus group. And so that'll be one group of summaries. There's also a summary from the housing convening that we held, a couple weeks ago now. Feels like yesterday. That summary itself was sent out to everyone that went to the housing convening, but we'll also post it up on our website. Third, it's a summary that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. We'll distill all the information we received from the map viewer, email, and from our municipal events to date in a summary. And that summary will probably remain pretty regional, pretty general. The municipal detail is really going to get put into these memos that we're writing to our long-range planning committee over the course of June and July. And those memos are really going to be a summary of the engagement process we've undertaken in each municipality. And or summarize the process. We're going to talk about any points of tension that remain, and then provide a recommendation to LRPC about the map specifically in that municipality. And that's where you'll find municipal specific detail about the map. And again, those will kind of be issued on a rolling basis throughout June and July. We can post those to the website if that is desired. Lastly, that mobile home park survey will summarize that likely in beginning of July. Any questions about how we're summarizing information we've received? The one other thing I'll say here is that we've chosen at this point in time not to do a direct responsiveness survey. We're not responding to each individual comment received. We will do that level of detail, that responsiveness survey, when we start the formal public hearing process on the entire ECOS plan next spring. Conference room.
Hi, yeah, so, which one of the summaries and like in what way is the information gonna be used from the meeting with the houseless individuals? Like, how are you guys finding the people to come and join that meeting? Because like, houseless individuals by definition are, in different places you might expect, like, is it just
Sure.
anybody you guys are finding who is living
Nope.
kind of like out on the
Nope.
streets or?
Nope. And so LAOB, that partner organization I mentioned, the Land Access Opportunity Board, is on a committee called the Homes for All Committee, and that committee is composed of a whole bunch of service providers that work directly with houseless individuals, and it's those service providers that will be asking folks if they want to participate in that event. And so it's really our job as CCRPC to help find the venue, provide food, organize the event, and then our partners at LAOB will be working with their partners to bring houseless folks to that event, and then we'll participate. And we may be asking a few members of our board to also participate in that event on June 6th.
And then which one of these summaries is that information gonna be compiled into?
Sure. Likely would be an addendum to number 3 because it's going to happen on June 6th. But Tess, we can make sure that information is available as a part of that, or even as a 5th summary, if that's useful.
Yeah, I think it would probably, it sounds like it would be useful if it was its own summary, so people don't have to dig around for it, because it's like a pretty unique set of needs compared to the rest of it.
We can do that. Any other questions on how we're summarizing information? All right, key findings, and I apologize for being pretty general tonight because it's a lot to try to review and summarize real quick in 2 days. We may have used our fancy ChatGPT tools to help us summarize, but I did want to provide the board with some sense of key findings from our engagement thus far. One of the big things that has come up a lot in our engagement efforts is folks kind of questioning or wanting to understand better the alignment of local and regional plans, particularly now that the regional plan has a lot more weight in terms of Act 250 jurisdiction in the state designation programs. And so for new board members, I'll just quickly describe the state designation programs are programs that typically center on a village center or a downtown area. They're defined geographically, and those geographic areas are people, landowners in those areas are able to apply for specific state grants or tax credits to maybe improve the facade of their building or do historic preservation work, that sort of. And so those geographic areas are now going to be defined in our regional plan. So there's lots of questions about how the plans align, and particularly, how much control municipalities have in their own plan to make changes to their own future land use map and still maintain conformance with the regional plan. And so we've done a lot of explanation around that. I think some municipalities are very trusting of that process, that we're going to work together. It's not going to be a top-down approach. The RPC is going to make municipalities change their regional future land use map. It's going to be a much more collaborative process. And then we've also really tried to mention to folks, particularly people on municipal planning commissions and select boards, that we know we likely will need to amend the regional plan at a more regular basis than we have in the past to be reflective of municipal plan amendments, because the plans now work together in a much more meaningful way. When talking to folks that are members of the general public, there's always this really great always this desire to really get detailed and talk about municipal regulation, because it's much more tangible and it's what people understand. And it's really tough to bring people back up and explain how this is a regional map. It's very general in terms of how land uses that are defined. It doesn't talk or have anything to do with how, let's say, steep slopes are regulated in your municipality. That's one thing that comes up all the time. The reality is all our municipalities regulate steep slopes very differently. And at a regional level, our map isn't going to get into detail about where steep slopes are and show them or put them in a certain land use category because our municipalities treat them all differently. We're really just going to focus on the statutory criteria. In our rural communities specifically, there are a lot of thoughts and feelings about the map in particular. I think there's a recognition that there needs to be housing. We're in a housing crisis, but there's a lot of fear about sprawl and about having negative impacts on our rural areas and working lands. We perpetually kind of hear about the lack of infrastructure, particularly water and sewer in a lot of our municipalities, and the ability to use that infrastructure to grow at density. And then we also hear from a lot of folks about their fear that a lot of our more rural places are going to become wealthy enclaves because there isn't a lot of ability to develop there at all, and the lots are going to be really big and they're going to be really expensive, and no one of lower or moderate means are going to be able to live there. And so don't have solutions to that, but something that we're certainly have been more attuned to now, I think, through this work over the last couple of months. Lastly, there's just this theme of, yeah, we need infrastructure, but we don't have enough local capacity to take on an infrastructure project. Members of the general public kind of question the effectiveness of their own governments to move larger projects along, like a sewer project. And then just generally a lot of planning fatigue from people that they are kind of feeling like there's a lot of these planning efforts and nothing ever happens, and questioning whether or not our planning effort will result in anything positive. Tier 1 and Tier 1A and Tier 1B. These are the areas where there is some level of Act 250 jurisdiction removal. Definitely just interest varies by municipality. A lot of our more urban places are probably going to opt into Tier 1A, it seems, talking to planning commissions and select boards, full Act 250 exemption. A lot of our mid-sized places are thinking about Tier 1B, particularly in their villages or the downtowns, or even smaller places. Westford has opted into Tier 1B, for example, in part of their village. But our most rural places aren't even thinking like they're going to opt into Tier 1B, just feeling like they're unlikely to seek any benefits because they won't have much developed in their towns anyways, because they lack infrastructure. Another key theme is around smart growth and climate concerns. Folks really want to make sure that our maps align with the state's climate goals in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, really concentrating growth in urban places, particularly along public transit lines. Really wanted to make sure, one of the first things a lot of people look at is the floodplains river corridors, making sure those are rural conservation. Those are areas that we're not planning for growth in the future. And just overall, kind of back to that sprawl concern, folks really wanted to make sure that we're minimizing environmental harm, particularly in our working lands. In terms of feedback from our own staff, which I thought would be valuable for the board, it's been a lot of us trying to navigate the balance between state planning goals and local planning goals. And, we really have the statutory definitions of these planning areas as backstops when we hear an idea that's maybe a little bit a field of good planning practice. But it's also really hampered our ability to be creative and to really be collaborative and responsive to concerns that have come up because we have these statutory requirements and we're stuck with them. And so it's been harder to show responsiveness to the general public, especially. We feel like we're kind of saying like, no, thanks for your comment. We hear you, but we have these criteria a lot, and that doesn't feel great. We try our best again to explain kind of the level that we're planning at, very high level, but we have felt a little hemmed in occasionally. Moving on to talk about the housing targets themselves. Folks generally think they're reasonable. I'll preempt Jeff by saying that folks think they're reasonable because there are no penalties if you don't meet those targets in the long term, and I certainly agree with that sentiment. But we haven't. I think we've done a pretty good job. There has not been a ton of pushback, and I don't think it's just our staff. I think it's also been municipal staff prepping planning commissions and select boards to really understand the weight of the situation that we're in. That said, we have got some pushback that, hey, the city should have higher targets, particularly in public transit lines. We need more housing there to make sure that we're bringing, down costs for renting in particular. We've also had, some folks say that, hey, the rural towns aren't doing their fair share. They should get higher targets, even though they don't have infrastructure. So not making everyone happy, but generally it feels like we're in the right spot. We heard a lot about this at the housing committee too, that, there's really a need for a giant housing mix out there, larger units, senior affordable units, but the market results recently are really mismatched with what those local housing needs related to those sized units, senior housing, et cetera. In our municipalities, in particular, our municipal staff really have this desire to know more about what specific kinds of housing in terms of unit size and price and those sorts of things are needed. And so we're going to try to address that a little bit in some analysis in the ECOS plan itself, but we want to address that obviously through our target in our map discussion. Infrastructure always comes up when we're talking about the housing targets. South Burlington's done a really good job making the case that the state's really got to target investment in these areas planned for growth to make sure that we have the infrastructure needed to support the housing that we need. And also, kind of to our harkening back to our discussion about RPCs providing support to our more rural municipalities, a lot of discussion about the need for state and regional funding and technical assistance to help those municipalities in particular do good planning work and to also build housing in their communities in places that they're planning for it. And that policy alignment point too is something that's come up a lot from developers that, through this process, there really needs to be alignment. I think they think there's alignment right now between a lot of local Chittenden County planning policy and regional policy. They want to make sure there's also alignment in state policy and where the state's investing its dollars in the future. Kind of a peripheral or an unrelated yet linked key finding is that we did engagement, specifically focus groups with a few non-English proficient communities that speak Arabic, French, Nepali this spring, and they were the same groups that we interacted with back in 2024 when we were doing ECOS engagement, specifically with underrepresented communities. And they were just unbelievably positive interactions with those same groups. They felt very heard and like we were building a relationship with them. And so I just want to call that out. Even if we didn't necessarily talk about the targets or the map that much, we talked a lot about what the Regional Planning Commission is. We talked a lot about sort of civics and local government in Chittenden County. And so staff's just trying to think about how, even after we adopt this ECOS plan, how do we try to maintain connections to some of these communities when we're out of regional plan cycle to make sure that we are continuing to build that trust with those communities. Any questions on key findings before I move on to the schedule?
I have a question or a comment.
Sure, Joe.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to say we really appreciate the effort that you guys have done. You've been to Huntington a bunch of times, and Kate has met with the Planning Commission, and Charlie and Kate have come and met with the Select Board. And I think that has made a really big difference to help them and us understand all of this. So thanks for doing that. I think it's been really, and Kate, it wasn't on your list. I was looking for the town meeting, but Kate was at town meeting and spent the day here, and I think that was really great. My comment / question is, with the future land use map, obviously like the village and the areas that the village and the downtowns that are defining where tier 1A and tier 1B are have like very clear purposes. Right. And then there's tier 3 floating around out there. And by the way, there's a meeting tomorrow night on tier 3 where people can start to give comments. But I'm just still not sure what the purpose of the rest of it is, what the rest of the land use categories are. I mean, it's interesting, but it's like, it's the why of that. I guess you need to have a complete picture. You can't just have identified villages and downtowns, but I just find like when people are asking and they feel concerned about like, why is this area conservation or whatever, the fallback is, well, don't worry about it. It doesn't really mean anything. So this map is not going to prevent you from doing something on your property. or whatever, right? And so what is the answer to that question? It's like what is the rest of it for?
Joe, I don't have a great answer for you because I think it's the legislature gave us these three flavors of rural that all kind of have the same purpose statement,
Yeah.
that are all a little bit different. And my understanding of their intent is the rural conservation category is really supposed to be the most sensitive natural resource lands, large forest blocks, those areas where there shouldn't be development. The rural ag forestry category is supposed to identify those lands that are currently used for forestry or for farms,
Right.
but we
Yeah,
don't
I
have really
understand
any
all
real
that. I
good way
understand
to,
there's
yeah.
like all these definitions of what they are, but like, and it's not just those three rural ones either. There's all the other categories that aren't necessarily in the tier
Yeah.
1A, tier B, range. And it's like, what is it for? And I guess a general answer I've come up with is, well, eventually there may be some sort of policies hung on those.
Yeah, Joe, my
Yeah.
more blunt response is going to be that, particularly when we went through the legislative committee process, I think there were just perspectives there about like, what about we need to show ski areas, or we need to show business parks, and we should show the farms. So they were really, to some extent, those kind of interests, but not with any necessarily policy objective. I think they were, trying to do their best to help us describe the region through these categories. I'm not sure that how well, to your point, I'm not sure that it is.
Well,
That
maybe that's
helpful
the
all the
answer.
time.
The answer is it's just descriptive.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that is mostly it, and and I'm sure as we all go through this process across the state, I expect we'll probably be in front of the legislature again talking about fine tuning this, and I don't know if some of that might change a little bit, but we'll see how next session plays out.
Yeah, I don't mean to be difficult. I mean, but it's just like,
Yeah,
what is it? Just been a question that's been, banging around in my head. It's like, okay, what for? What's the why here?
yeah,
But
and I will say, I didn't hear during the legislative process any specific agendas like, hey, if you map this, then we're planning to do XYZ later. Yeah, at least maybe somebody was thinking it, but nobody articulated that I heard
right.
really.
Yeah, and I believe that at the moment. I can see,
Yeah,
at the moment I understand that. I think, but it would sort of be logical in the future that things, policies, grant programs, whatever, maybe get
yeah.
tied to some of these different categories, but that's not
And
where it is right now. Yeah.
well, that was the primary purpose of mapping these the areas that are eligible for Tier 1B
Right.
was about investment, state
Yeah.
investment, and state regulatory relief, right? So um, that's where we are right now. Yeah.
I don't think you're being difficult, Joe. We have the same thought process here as staff, and has been a challenge. We spent a lot of time talking about the rural categories despite the lack of link to anything related to activity jurisdiction or designation. So,
And seeing Max, you have a question?
Yeah,
Comment?
I just wanted to comment that I know that in Westford, at least, there is some concern that these rural and ag categories, excuse me, conservation categories have implications for the future, and we don't understand what they are. So just throw that out there for consumption.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Max. And I'll just kind of reiterate again. I think like the ag one, the ag forestry, right? We're talking about working lands, and there's a lot of overlap with the other two rural categories, and that really came out of legislator interest. They really wanted to make sure that we were supporting those rural working lands, whether it be a farm or working forest. And so they were like, "Yeah, you should map that to make sure the community knows that we support those businesses." So I don't know. I don't know if that's helpful, Max. And the rural conservation, I think, is really driven by much more local conversations than any state policy regarding our regional land use maps. Obviously, tier 3, as Joe said, yeah, there's a public meeting is it tomorrow night in
Tomorrow night.
The Essex Act 250 office. So if you are concerned about tier 3, a potential Act 250 jurisdiction in that area, definitely encourage you to plug into that public meeting or go there in person.
Thank you.
We will have, Kate McCarthy from our office will be observing that meeting tomorrow, Joe, just so you know. We don't have much to say about tier 3, but we will monitor the discussion.
Yeah, no, I might watch that too tomorrow because I'm just curious where they are with it. And it's something that's of interest to other folks in Huntington.
Definitely. Totally understand. Any other questions on key findings? All right, moving on to the schedule. This is a more detailed schedule than what the board has seen in the past. And so we're here on May 21st. We're currently summarizing comments we received over the past couple months into a digestible document. Starting next week, and actually starting today a little bit, staff is going to meet to review the comments received and start determining what additional edits we should make to the future land use map before providing a draft to the long range planning committee. And so we hope to, at least for some municipalities, have a revised draft by June 5th. As I say that, our staff is also meeting with a lot of your municipalities after June 5th, and they'll probably be talking about a first draft and maybe there to discuss any changes that may have come out of the public comments and want to talk about that with your planning commission planning commission select boards. And so edits may come later as well after June 5th. On June 10th, our long range planning committee will hold a meeting and they will get an Act 181 reintroduction. And they're at least going to talk about 3 municipalities in those long range planning committee memos I've talked about. We'll summarize the municipal process, talk about any remaining points of conflict, and provide a staff recommendation. And so I think on June 10th, we will talk about Westford, we will talk about South Burlington, and possibly Charlotte or Shelburne. I cannot remember which one. The rest of the municipalities likely we will talk about with LRPC at their July 8th meeting. There's also a possibility if we think we move too slow at the first June meeting, we might add a second July meeting on July 1st for LRPC to get through all 19 municipalities. At the end of LRPC's review of our work with every municipality, the LRPC will be making a recommendation to you all as the board about the map. And so at the July 16th board meeting, we hope to have a revised draft of the map for the board to review. And we'll review that in concert with any last changes that happen with the housing targets. Because remember, for some municipalities, the housing targets are linked to the map. So numbers may change a little bit for those municipalities that are a mix of urban and rural. The cities and the rurals won't change. It'll just be those in the middle category. LRPC, our long range planning committee, will also meet in August and September. It's during that time frame that they're going to be reviewing our environmental benefits and burdens analysis. So they'll be looking at the draft map that hopefully you folks are okay with on July 16th, figuring out if we've mapped in some way that is creating too much of a burden or not enough benefit in particular areas, and perhaps making recommendations to the board about further map changes, which you will then review in September and in October. LRPC in August and September will also start reviewing the entire ECOS plan, which is, if you remember, and new board members may not know this, has pretty much been drafted and ready for the past year. It's already been copy edited. It's ready to go. And so LRPC likely will be focusing very much on the goals and the actions in the plan to make sure that, any additional things we've heard this past year related to the map and targets or anything else really is reflected in the ECOS plan.
And Taylor, remind us, when was our last ECOS plan submitted, ratified?
Our last
approved?
ECOS plan was adopted in June 2018.
2018.
And so our ECOS plan will expire in June 2026. And so this schedule here gets us on a path to adopt a new ECOS plan by June 2026.
And our ECOS plan is the greater equivalent of the local municipal plans.
Correct. It is the regional plan.
Thank you.
Ideally, on October 15th, the board feels comfortable enough having CCRPC staff submit our full ECOS plan to the Land Use Review Board, so the Land Use Review Board can complete their new public hearing review. So Land Use Review Board has 60 days before our first public hearing to review our regional plan and provide us with comments. So we hope to do that in October, get comments back in December, make some last edits to fulfill whatever needs they have, and then we'll start the formal adoption process in January and February. Any questions on schedule? It is laborious, guys. It's taken a while. Apologies.
It has, and applause and kudos to everybody involved and for the 140 odd meetings, number one, but number two, the planning that went into all those meetings and coordinating both the map, the outreach, and the last 2 years of just absolute absorption of the new items that needed to be included into the ECOS plan. We had, as Taylor noted, had it ready to go in draft form, but then held it in abeyance, waiting for this map and these housing targets and language and stuff that was still being worked out in the legislature. So pretty amazing, along with the brand new LURB, Land Use Review Board, that came out of nowhere. Dana, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about that. Has any other municipality gone through the LURB approval process yet?
So
Is
only
there anything to learn?
Yep. Just the RPCs will go through the LURB process in terms of regional plan review. Dana, we're third in line.
No, that's what I meant. Sorry. RPCs.
That's all right. The LURB's going to start doing intake in September. And so Rutland Regional Commission is going to submit their plan on September 15th, about a month before us. Northwest RPC is going to submit to the LURB around October 1st, and then we'll submit to the LURB on October 16th, hopefully. And so we'll learn from those two other RPCs right before us, but we won't have a lot of time in between to learn from them.
Well, this is going to be so interesting. Is there contact between the LURB staff and the RPCs around this? I mean, it's great that there were planners appointed to the LURB. I don't know. I'm just fascinated by it all.
We are talking to the LURB. Charlie, you want to talk about contact with the LURB?
Sure. Would love to. So I have been plugging into, I don't know if most of their meetings, but meetings where they were talking about anything relevant to regional plan review. I'll put it that way. I've been trying to get plugged in there, and also to share responses. I've been trying to facilitate the other RPCs also, kind of providing me some feedback so that I can provide it to the LURB. So I've been playing a little bit of that role of go-between with Catherine Dimitrick also from Northwest, and so we also worked on. We have a checklist by which we review municipal plans. We kind of took that and updated it for the purpose of reviewing regional plans and provided that to them. So they're largely, basing their review based on that statutory checklist. Did you do this? Did you do that? And so I think, talking to Janet Hurley has been leading that part of the work for the LURB. They're going to try to confirm that we're following statute. That's their job, and not get into, too many opinions about, well, you could have done that a little bit better, and you could have done that, right? Which is something we try to avoid when we review municipal plans, right? Like, did you do what statute says without, getting overly subjective? So I don't know, fingers crossed so far, but it is going to be an interesting time. And the reason Taylor knows like that schedule of sequencing is because the LURB also wanted to make sure that they didn't get, regional plans all at the same time, because it is going to take them and state agencies So it's the LURB and state agencies all having 60 days to review. So we're trying to space it out a little bit to help them with that review kind of big chunk of work coming to them all at once. And it is going to be pretty much, they're going to have one regional plan a month, pretty much, from September through next summer.
Well, it'll be really interesting. Strap in.
The first couple regional plans might be interesting. I'm not sure about the 12th one or the 11th one.
Right. Hopefully not.
Charlie.
And I will say, on a couple points, I think the LURB is trying to be as reassuring as they can, that, they're not trying to, play gotcha, or, they're just going to try to check for statutory compliance. And I was kind of reminded of this and Joe's question about tier 3 also. They've been kind of like, no, we're gonna talk about tier 3, but we're not going to include most of the state. We're going to try to be very strategic about some really important resources that ought to have some extra protection. So I think they've been trying to be as reassuring as they can be, but we'll see when the rubber meets the road.
Thanks.
Charlie, anything related to housing bills you want to talk about?
Just and if you've read any news about the housing bills, so I think there's still 2, but it will get to 1 bill. The big issue that they're really trying to resolve is really that last bullet there, the Community Housing Infrastructure Program, which is sometimes been getting referred to as project-based TIF, tax increment financing. And I think they're just kind of debating, to how much guardrails do they need to put around it. So that's really getting debated in the House this week. And they are planning to adjourn at the end of next week. So I expect sometime in the next few days, either the end of this week or early next week, I expect they will come to some closure on that Community Housing Infrastructure Program, commonly getting referred to as CHIP. So that's my Pollyannish hopeful thinking that they are going to get. Because of course the second. Oh, sorry, Chris.
I was going to say because it's going to take a chip out of the education fund.
Well, there's some angst about that.
Yeah.
Although from my perspective, every project is actually adding education tax revenue, not taking away. But the other, and of course, and Chris, I don't know if you're doing this on purpose, but I was about to say the other major policy issue that they're dealing with is education reform. And it's typically the budget, but the governor signed the budget today, I think. So the budget is all done. It's these 2 other major policy, housing and education, that is still going through some hearty conversation in the State House. Happy to take any questions or feedback on that, but.
There's no questions about that. If you have any questions about EcoSplan or about Act 181, please feel free to reach out to me.
Okay.
And Chris, that is it for me on this topic.
Great. I will, if people are formulating questions, maybe they can ask Charlie in agenda item 13, Chair and Executive Director updates, but we'll move on to agenda item 11. At the back of your packet, page 23, you have a memo summarizing outreach and engagement update for the Community Engagement Advisory Committee. They didn't meet in April because we had the regional housing convening, but they will meet a week from today. Next bullet point, you heard this Nepali group had met for the future land use map, and the Arabic speaking group had met. And apparently at some point yesterday, the day before, or Monday, the French speaking group was scheduled to meet, and the Swahili group is scheduled on June 1st. In addition, you see the Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs is potentially going to put together a training for RPC staff that may happen here. And the last 2 bullet points, you have research from Irmela ongoing about the translation services and language practices that are being used. And then the Google Asset Map, which would be an important resource as we move out of ECOS and the future land use maps. And who are our organizations? How do we maintain the coordination with these key groups that we can have as an ongoing dialogue for both our benefits? So that's all there in the packet. If you have any more questions or want detail from that, you see the two contacts at the bottom, Irmela and Sarah. Feel free to reach out to them. We'll move on quickly to staff updates. We've heard a lot from Taylor. I don't want to belabor him, but he's first up on item 12A. Taylor, we know a lot of your work and effort. We appreciate it. Maybe you can fill in the blanks on the rest of you with your playoff
Sure.
beard that you have there and fine hockey
Yeah.
form. You've been doing great work. Hopefully
wish
it'll
it
be a
was-
Stanley Cup in the future.
I wish it was more of a playoff beard. It just stops growing at some point, Chris. So I'm Taylor Newton. I'm the planning program director here at CCRPC. For whatever it's worth, I think I am the only staff member that was born here in Chittenden County. Not the only Vermonter, but I am the only one I think that was born in Chittenden County. I grew up in Colchester, went to public schools there. Jackie Murphy on the board here was my admissions counselor to St. Michael's College for undergrad. I went to St. Mike's for 4 years, and then I have a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Iowa. I've been working in municipal and regional planning for 15 plus years now, kind of hard to believe. I worked in Milton for a time as zoning administrator and town planner, town health officer, and a few other things. Because when you work for a small town, you get a lot of the extra roles. Then I worked at Northwest RPC for 6 years before moving here as senior planner, and then taking over for Regina almost 3 years ago now. In terms of what do I do here at CCRPC? Well, I manage 7 staff, soon to be 8 once we hire this new shared zoning administrator with Underhill and St. George. So that takes up a bit of my time trying to make sure those staff are supported and that whatever issues they run into on the, I'll estimate 35 to 40 to 50-ish projects they're working on are moving ahead smoothly. I help Charlie, Forrest, and Eleni put together the UPWP and the budget every year. I try to assist Charlie whenever I can related to state planning policy or anything that he's dealing with down in Montpelier. I typically manage a municipal project or 2. Right now, ECOS is one of those projects, not municipal, but certainly taking up quite a bit of time. I'm also managing the Shelburne bylaw project right now, mostly as a favor to Shelburne because they needed some help. And that's a lot of what I've done historically is working on municipal plan and bylaw projects. Also really enjoy grant writing when I can do that. Haven't been able to do that much the last couple of years. I also manage the long range planning committee. I help manage the PAC, which is the planning advisory committee. That's the committee that's composed of most of the planning directors here in Chittenden County or planning commission chairs in smaller municipalities. And through that work with the PAC, supervise review of municipal plans here in Chittenden County to make sure they conform with statute and with the regional plan itself. I also spend a lot of time providing technical assistance to municipalities when they run into issues related to writing a town plan or adoption or with more frequency related to local zoning and subdivision regulations. I also am the CCRPC rep on the West Central Vermont Economic Development District. And so I've had a hand in writing the CEDS, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for the region over the last couple of years and have been trying to position us well for future EDA funding, Economic Development Administration funding. I also serve as the planning rep for the state on the Vermont Systems Planning Committee. That's a committee that reviews electric transmission projects in the state. Once upon a time when RPCs were starting to do energy planning, that was one of the first big projects I worked on. And that got parlayed to me being on this committee that looks at transmission projects a couple of years later. Yeah, I've dabbled in a lot of things from emergency management to a little bit of transportation planning to, you work at an RPC long enough, you kind of do everything. And I guess I've been in an RPC long enough to have dabbled in most things. With that, any any questions for me? I live in Burlington, married, I have a couple young daughters that are in elementary school. I like to hike when it's summertime, whenever that comes.
That's pretty awesome. I heard about 15 different hats there, and you probably have about 5 more, certainly at home on any given hour of the day.
I was
So
gonna ask what else he does at the RPC. Didn't sound like enough.
Whatever needs to get done, Garrett.
any other comments or
I hear
kudos
that
for
one.
Taylor? Thank you, Taylor. Very much appreciate that. And I'm very intrigued that Jackie was your admissions counselor there. That's a great kudo. Good stuff. I'm going to turn to the conference room where Melanie has been keeping Tessa Bryan and Bruce Wilson company, and ask her to weigh in with some of her background and energies.
Hi, yes, I'm here, just waiting for the owl to find me. Okay, hi, everybody. I'm Melanie Needle. I live in Burlington with my husband. I have 2 teenagers that keep me very busy and 2 golden doodles. I'm the GIS and IT manager. I've been at CCRPC since 2004. So I'm on my 21st year here, but prior to becoming the GIS and IT manager, I was senior planner. My role was still doing about half GIS and half planning projects related to updating and preparing the regional plan. I developed the ECOS indicators that have become part of the regional plan in 2013 and have been keeping them current. I worked on energy and climate climate projects, wrote the Chittenden County Climate Action Plan around 2010, crunched a lot of data to estimate a greenhouse gas emissions inventory across numerous sectors, helped write numerous town plans, and I also did a stint with emergency management planning. But currently my focus is on working with our IT contractor tech group to keep our network healthy and running, and oversee 30 laptops and make sure that they're running smoothly. Staff can print, staff can get to the network. You get the software that they need to be effective as well as hardware. And then when I'm not doing that, most of my work is on responding to municipal mapping requests, town plan map updates, tracking new housing growth, which is a responsibility that I brought with me from my senior planner roles. Building numerous web mapping applications for towns and for the regions. Similar to the future land use comment mapping application that we used for Act 181 comments. I love being the GIS and IT manager. It's a nice combination of working with staff. And then also, using GIS to help make informed, data-driven planning decisions. Any questions?
Dana, go ahead.
So if I'm trying to understand who has replaced Pam as far as who towns turn to for mapping help. Is it you?
That would be me, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
But she's full up, Dana.
Seriously.
And you obviously must have some visual spatial aptitude there, Melanie. Is that correct? You
I
found
think so.
Yeah. Didn't you won the senior art award in high school, I would imagine?
I actually did not. I think more of my artistic abilities come out in the maps.
Well, very good. And the name of your 2 golden doodles? I'm very interested in dog names lately.
Yeah, so we have a white one whose name is Scout, and he is actually the father of Moose, who is the gray one.
Awesome. What a great Vermont name, Moose. Other questions for Melanie? Any thoughts? Kudos. Thank you for your work. We appreciate it. And I think it shows up in the flu map, does it not? I'm impressed when I talk to Taylor and I look over his shoulder and he's pulling up layer after layer after layer of everything from, hydrology of the locations to the sewer structures to everything else that could be possibly mapped.
That's all Melanie. That's not me. Mel puts together those
I know,
maps.
but it's
Show 'em off.
impressive. It's like these gels that just kept getting layered on top of them. It's SimCity all over again.
Melanie
I very
also
much
goes.
enjoy. Oh, go ahead,
Right.
Garrett.
I was just going to say you also go way back on regional plan work.
Yes,
Way
I
back.
started at the 2006 regional plan.
Where we work together. Yeah. Thank you.
We appreciate the longevity. Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, I've Melanie's been very professional and really very helpful through the years because I served with her on the climate action plan as well as the energy plan, the enhanced energy plan.
And now we have the housing plan. Good stuff. Well, thank you. We'll move to agenda item 13, Chair Executive Director updates. The chair is going to report that he won't be able to attend our meeting on June 18th at the Mansfield Barn in Jericho. I'm sorry to say, bit of my swan song, but I have an important anniversary, birthday thing to attend to. So Bard will be taking over, I suspect, in the short run. Other than that, I'm going to hand it over to Charlie for
All right.
his
Yeah,
comment.
family first, Chris. Good. So just a few things. Yeah, annual meeting. I think everybody knows. Hopefully, you've seen a registration email. I think come out from Emma. Oh no, not yet.
Right.
Sorry, Emma.
Not quite yet. That's going out tomorrow morning.
Oh,
Stay
sorry,
tuned.
Emma. Sorry, I'm
Don't worry.
rarely ahead of Emma. But so yeah, heads up, registration coming out to you very soon. Sorry, I guess I did the test version an hour or two ago, didn't I? I should know better. Also, Emma has sent communications to the end of the alphabet towns, I think, for board member appointments, and yeah, TAC and PAC and whatever they are. But there are, so just touch base if you haven't with your select board, just to check on your or you can check with Emma if you need to about your schedule for appointments. Emma, is there more you want to say about that in a better way than I just did?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, we have appointments. I think I've been in touch with pretty much every town at this point. It's a little confusing because there are 3 committees that get appointed at once, and then the other for half the towns, the other half appoint just the PAC. So it's a little confusing. I've talked with a number of you about that already, but yes, appointments are due the 30th of May, and they trickle in a little bit later than that sometimes too, which is okay. So I see Benjamin has maybe a question about it, but.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I've actually been reappointed by the select board, but I just wanted to find out about the ethics forum. I wanted to make sure while I zoom in for most of my meetings, I want to make sure that I have that in on time and appropriately. Is that online? Is that somewhere that I've missed?
No, you haven't missed it. That's a great question. And actually that was brought up a little bit earlier in the meeting, which prompted me that's a good way to close the appointments process. And so I think the best thing for me to do is send that out to everybody directly. So stay tuned for that. It will be sort of an attachment to that full, code of conduct that you all approved a little bit ago, but just a very simple, I've read this, I've acknowledged it.
Great. Thank you very much. I've been looking for it and I hadn't seen it, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't me. So
not you at all. Thanks so much.
Try to keep on these. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Item C on here was just to let you know, basically every 4 years we go out requests for qualifications for consultants that we use during the subsequent years. And we're in that process right now. And actually, I think the TAC just approved the selection of those consultants. I'm looking for Eleni, but I'm not seeing her. But yeah, that just happened at the TAC meeting this month. And I've left federal funding update on here just in case something came up. But the only news I have at the moment is good, which was that EPA grant that we got word of on Friday, and no other negative news, or I should say, no other negative decisions that impact us yet. There are definitely some concerning things in the administration. The president issued his skinny budget, I think, a week and a half ago or something. There was, a lot of programs that would be cut, and hard to tell if any of those would affect us directly yet. But it's, that's just the start of the budget process. So the Congress will be going through that budget process over the coming months. And I'll keep you posted if I hear anything that seems directly impactful. And I did just get word from the Vermont State Housing Authority that they had $1 million cut in. I'm not sure if it was some sort of voucher program, but it seems like a cut that may definitely impact our houseless population in not a good way. And that's not speculative. That is a cut that they just got notified about. Sorry, the little tangent there. Legislative updates. I think we just covered that under Taylor's report, but happy to take any questions if anybody has any. All right, thank you. Oh, Chris, you're muted.
Yeah, I want to keep the dog quiet in the background. I'm going to open it up to item 14. Any members' items I'd like to bring forward? Hearing none, your committee liaison activity reports are on the website and or through the hyperlink on your packet there on page 1. And you read up on those meetings. Item 16, adjournment. I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Benjamin. And a second. I see Bard's hand go up, and everybody else is in short order too. So all those in favor, please say aye and hit the leave button. We will see you in another month.
Yeah, thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Don't forget to register for the annual meeting.
Yes.